fire this up. So I'm just talking about our Hobbit essays. What was I saying? You don't want to come across too strong. The other side stinks. But you also don't want to give them quarter and say, well, you could be right. And that part that we crossed out of the outline, that worksheet I gave you, that handout, had refutation. And I told you to exit out that we're not doing it this time. That's a good way to, when we start adding that, it's a good way to say that the other side is wrong without saying, everybody who disagrees with me stinks. So you might say in your refutation, the other side might argue this against my position. But here's what I say to them. The other side might argue something else, but this is what I say to them. We're not doing that in this paper, but other than that, Emma, your outline looks great. Thank you. I will happily read this week. And let's dive in. The first thing I want to do is look at some artwork. I am going to have to leave the camera for this. Our artist of the week is probably, I would assume, somebody you are all familiar with. Oh, I've not got my clock out yet. This is a key element. Oh, I do have a clock on my 9:03. That's what I've got. Can I trust that? Oh, rats. Oh, and I already told the early arrivers this, but, if you want to see pictures after class, consult me. My daughter is currently in New Zealand, having a wonderful time. 2 days ago, she went to Hobbiton and had dinner at the Green Dragon. And the evening tour, they go during the day, and they get to tour the Shire. And they've got just in January, they have designed 2 Hobbit holes that you can go in. They're fully furnished. She said the attention to detail was amazing. There was just everything everywhere. And then they go to the Green Dragon, and they served them like a lamb dinner. And then they turned on lamps everywhere. They had strings of lamps, and they walked through. The party, if you've seen the movies, I hope you haven't seen the movies before you read the book, but if you have, the party tree, the long expected party at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring, where they filmed that. And so it was amazing. Today, they're a day ahead of us. It's Wednesday in New Zealand. It's Wednesday at 4 a.m. She went to Mount Doom, and where they filmed all those scenes. There are 3 active volcanoes, and it's called Rapahua or something like that. It's not called Mount Doom. Anyway, they have gondolas that will take you up the side and a chalet up there, and she had high tea on Mount Doom. And what? Anyway, so I have pictures if you want to see, if you're interested. Okay, let's go back to the artist that I assume you know, Leonardo da Vinci. Let me read what Dorothy Mills said about him in that long chapter 2 with all the artists. Vasari, who is a famous biographer of artists, Vasari tells us of many other painters who lived and worked in Florence, but a few does he give such a vivid account as of Leonardo da Vinci, who was at once a painter, sculptor, man of science, engineer, and philosopher. I'm going to read a part of what the biographer says. This marvelous and divine Leonardo was the son of Piero da Vinci. He would have made great profit in learning had he not been so capricious and fickle, for he began to learn many things and then gave them up. Thus, in arithmetic, during the few months that he studied it, he made such progress that he frequently confounded his master by continually raising doubts and difficulties. He devoted some time to music and soon learned to play the lyre, and being filled with a lofty, delicate spirit, he could sing and improvise divinely with it. Yet, though he studied so many different things, he never neglected design and relief. It means like sculpture that is 3-dimensional, relief. those being the things which appealed to his fancy more than any other. When Ser Piero, his father, perceived this, and knowing the boy's soaring spirit, he one day took some of his drawings to Andrea del Verrocchio, who was a famous artist at the time, who was his close friend, and asked his opinion whether Leonardo would do anything by studying design. Andrea was so amazed at these early efforts that he advised Ser Piero to have the boy taught. So it was decided that Leonardo should go to Andrea's workshop. The boy was greatly delighted, and not only practiced his profession, but all those in which design had a part. Leonardo da Vinci, as his biographer told us, was really good at everything. But sometimes when you're good at everything, it's a problem because you can't choose. I'm not good at everything, but I'm interested in everything. This is my problem. I want to learn everything, so I tend to jump, from thing to thing. So I'm no genius at all. I'm just curious. I'm just interested in things. But Leonardo da Vinci was a genius, so he could learn things, but then, I've been there, done that. Moving on. So he ended up starting a lot of pieces of art that he never finished because he got interested in something else. So we have half-done pieces, and he also had a bad habit of experimentation that I will tell you about in a moment. All right, that's all I'm going to read. So I have this book. It's like the work of Leonardo da Vinci in various areas, and I may leave my camera here. Let me show you first of all the most famous of all. Well, one of the two most famous of all. Oh, I don't have the whole. It's not. Okay, here it is. Here it is. So this is Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. This is. Have you guys seen this? You're familiar with this painting of Jesus and his disciples at the Last Supper? Can you kind of see it, Noah? Can you see it? Okay. Sounded like there was something on the floor. It's in the dining room of a monastery. The monks dined here, and it looked to them like the room opened out and Jesus and his disciples were at the end of the room. It's big. It covers a wall. Yes? Oh, okay. Yes. The problem with this painting, and let me show you the next page here. This is what it's kind of looking like. This is a close-up of Jesus. Is it looking real good? Can you see from there that it's all speckly? Can you see that from where I am? Leonardo da Vinci liked to experiment with his paint. So he would make his own paint, and he's like, oh, I have the greatest idea. We're going to try this. And then he would use it, but he didn't experiment with it first. He just said, oh, I'm going to paint this wonderful, huge whole wall in my experimental paint. And then it started flaking off. I mean, it started pretty quickly flaking off. For the last 400 years have been a race to try to not let this thing flake off the wall. So art experts and art historians are always there trying to fix it. I didn't mark this one, but he was hired, it was like a royal palace, I think, to paint a mural, an entire wall with a battle scene. And he used another experimental paint. And it wouldn't dry. It wouldn't dry. So he hung lamps in front of it, so the heat, but it started melting it. Nothing to say about that. I mean, he was just adventurous. He was just interested in everything and adventurous, and so he experimented. This is the famous, it's called the Virgin of the Rocks. It's Mary and Saint Anne, Mary's mother, with or is that with Elizabeth? Elizabeth would be old, but I think it's Jesus and John the Baptist. So it seems like it would be Mary and Elizabeth, but we can take liberties with people's age in art. It's kind of easy to pick out the most famous Da Vinci paintings because, like I said, there aren't a lot of them. Here's another one. This is Saint Anne and Jesus. Let me go back here and show the camera. And I will get to the most famous one. Oh, this is a favorite in our family. The woman with the ermine. That little animal is an ermine. It's a ferretish. So he did some portraits. The most famous portrait is obviously this one. It's not very big. I was pictures big, but then I see pictures in the Louvre. Oh, it doesn't have dimensions. Some books have the dimensions. He did a lot of other paintings that are very similar to her. We think we know she's the wife of a nobleman that commissioned this painting, but people are just fascinated by the Mona Lisa, by her sort of enigmatic smile. There's a story that you have to sit for a long time to have your portrait painted. You can imagine. And it's not very exciting to just sit there, So they say that Leonardo da Vinci brought jesters and bards and things in to amuse her. And some people have speculated that one of them did something amusing and Leonardo da Vinci captured that smile. But that is not all there was, like I said, to Leonardo da Vinci. We have a lot of unfinished paintings because he just, he wouldn't be done with one and then he'd take a job for another one. But you didn't finish the other one. Well, I'll get around to it, maybe not. But he was just so interested in things. He was interested in mechanics. So he kept journals and notebooks. It says this is his study of a floater with breathing tubes for a diver. He's just speculating on how he could design this. And the writing is backwards. All his writing is backwards. Now, some people have turned this into a conspiracy theory that he was top secret, he didn't want anybody to read his notes. But I think there's an easier answer. But yes, Emma.
Yeah, I'm guessing that he was dyslexic.
Possibly, but I think he did it on purpose. And do I have my marker? Oh, I guess I don't need the marker because I don't have to actually write. So, if you're right-handed and you write, it's fine. And remember, you're writing with ink that will smear, like with a pen that you've dipped in ink. Or in my case, I have fountain pens. If I touch my writing too soon, it will smear across the page. I have to let my writing at home dry for a moment. You're fine. But what if you're left-handed? You write and your hand drags through. But if you start from this end and write this way, if you're left-handed, you see, your hand doesn't drag through the ink. And he was left-handed. So everybody now thinks that he just wrote backwards so he wouldn't drag his hand through the ink because he's in a hurry. He doesn't want to, have to be careful or let the ink dry or anything. This is very plausible. Honestly, I don't think anybody knows for sure, but that's a solution that makes sense. Here is another of his sketches. These are studies of the human body, of muscles, of musculature, because as an artist, he wanted to know how the body looked as it moved into various positions. Some of you may know, I won't make a comment on it. Often artists train by drawing people without their clothes on, nude models. And it's not because, this person isn't wearing clothes. It's because it's the only way to see their body. You can't see their body because their clothes are in the way. So you're trying to capture exactly the curve of the shoulder and the muscles. This is obviously like part of it, the muscles inside your body. People were starting in the 1600s to do a lot of exploring of the body, like dissecting bodies. For a while, that was considered to be, what do I say, disrespectful to the dead. But honestly, it's the only way they could find out what's inside your body, you know, and how it all works and how it fits together. And today, people sometimes donate their bodies. You know, you can donate your body to science, and you can be used for medical students because they need to learn. So you might say, well, how did he get these pictures? You know, how did he know what it looked like? Because they were starting to explore what bodies looked like underneath the skin. Which is why medicine made big advances. You know, they found out how your blood moves through your body and arteries and veins. And however, he wasn't just interested in bodies and medicine. Here is his famous sketch of a helicopter, of some sort of flying machine. So there's no reason why people shouldn't be able to fly. But here's the interesting thing. People once upon a time thought maybe if you made wings big enough, you know, and we flapped them fast enough, we could fly like a bird. This is never, don't do it. Do not make wings and jump off your roof. Don't do it. You won't fly because you're too heavy. Birds are very light. You know, they have hollow bones. They have this skeletal structure that's made for flight. And the amount of force with which you would have to flap to keep yourself, you'll never do it. So, but he didn't draw a set of wings. He drew a machine. Like he knew. People can't fly with wings. If we're going to ever fly, we have to have a machine to do it for us, and it's not going to work like wings. I've seen early flying machines where people, it was basically like strapping on wings. You know, they were going to pull levers or something like that and flap huge wings. Leonardo da Vinci knew that wasn't going to work. Did he follow up on it? No. This is a device for manufacturing concave mirrors. Do you know what concave means? What is concave or convex? They're opposites. Yeah, so concave is dips in, convex bumps out. What device or devices do people use special mirrors in? Do you know? Concave or convex mirrors? What? Yes, we do, slightly, so that we can see a wider range, right? How about in the 1600s? Because they didn't have cars. Can you think of a device that was starting to be used? Telescopes. Telescopes. The first telescope was in the 1500s. And so, and we'll talk about that, I don't know, in another month or two. About the rise of science. So anyway, I'm going to leave this out. If we get done early, this thing is just, I just marked a few. I mean, pages and pages and pages and pages of his notes. Oh my goodness. Amazing, amazing, brilliant man, but sort of a moral lesson. Starting things is good, but you've got to finish them. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever start something and you're really excited about it, and then it starts getting hard and you get tired of it a little bit? Sometimes when we learn things, learning a language can be like that. Oh, I'm going to learn whatever. And then you start it and you're like, oh, I'm so excited. I learned a few words. And then it gets hard. I'm like, well, shoot, this isn't fun anymore. But you have to keep going. And then on the other side, it gets fun again because you're good at it. How many of you play music or do a sport? Or learning a musical instrument would be like that, right? Like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to learn to, you know, play the clarinet. And then, oh, shoot, I got to practice an hour this afternoon or 2 hours or whatever if I'm going to get good. But then when you can play whatever you want, it gets fun again. So I was going to say, do not be like Leonardo da Vinci. We all want to be like Leonardo da Vinci because he was brilliant, but not a good follower through. All right, go ahead and get your reading questions out. I actually brought another piece of art in. Actually, while we're doing art, this is one that was mentioned in this week's chapter. Let me find it. So you read this week about Spain, right? What was different? Why was Spain not the same as all the rest of the countries of Europe? Why was its history not really the same? Yeah, Henley. It was Muslim. It wasn't Christian. It was ruled by a completely different kind of culture with a completely different kind of religion. And so they developed differently. I'm going to save the art till the end. Let's go ahead and just do it in order that I asked the questions. So the first question I asked you was, how did the Spanish treat the Muslims living there? What did they promise to do in 1492, and did they do it? Did it work? Would anybody like to answer any of that? I'm going to let Noah do it.
They treated the Muslims like okay.
Yeah.
When they had the treaty, it did not work out.
Now I should say, this was after the Muslims were no longer in control, right? That question doesn't make sense. How did they treat the Muslims? I just said the Muslims were in charge. In the north of Spain were a couple of nations, Aragon, Castile, and they had always been Christian. And they started pushing the Muslims out until finally Europeans, Christian Europeans, were taking over most of Spain. And they had a choice. Should we be mean to the Muslims? Should we harass them and persecute them? Or should we just let them live here? The Muslims, is this true, what I'm about to say? I'm not sure. I was going to say the Muslims left the Christians alone. I'm not totally sure that's 100% true. There just weren't very many Christians in Spain under the Muslim rule. However, the Muslims generally had a policy of leaving you alone if you paid taxes to them, if you were a Christian. So it says in 1492, an agreement was reached, the capitulation of Granada, by which lenient terms were given to the Moors. Those are Muslims from North Africa that had come over to Spain, and a number of privileges accorded to them. They were promised freedom of worship, the right to educate their children as they wished, to live under their own laws, and keep their own traditions. But Catholic Spain was very bitter and intolerant towards unorthodoxy and other religions. The Moors were persecuted and terrorized. Wherever copies of the Quran were found, they were confiscated and large numbers were burnt. The Moors, who in 1492 had settled down peaceably, believing the terms of the agreement would be honorably kept, revolted. You know what? I kind of don't blame them. And in the years 1500 and 1501, there were serious disorders. The result was an edict in 1502 offering the unhappy Moors the alternative of accepting Christian baptism or going into exile. Now, I didn't ask you this question, but maybe you can put it together with something we talked about earlier. What was a downside for Spain of getting rid of all the Muslims? What were the Muslims really good at and knowledgeable in, Henley? What? Okay, trade routes, yes. I hadn't thought of that, actually. That's good. Because they could freely pass down the Mediterranean and through the Middle East. What else? Can you remember something we talked about that the Arabs knew a lot about even before Europe did? Do you remember, Liam? Science, math and science. The Muslims had Aristotle and Plato, translated into Arabic, before Europe had it. The Arabs tended to be the best scientists and mathematicians. So the best, what do we want to say, builders of technology. And the Spanish just threw them out. Your best minds, you just threw them out. Maybe not the best idea. Do you remember what we call these numbers? I know we call them integers. I know they're numerals, but they're a special kind. They're not Roman numerals. They're Arabic numerals. We get our numbers from the Arabs, from the Muslim world, and yeah. So that was not. Do you think sometimes people do things and they don't see the consequences of their actions? I feel like I do this a lot. I think the Spanish did this. If we get rid of the Muslims, we're losing our best thinkers. What was something else that Ferdinand and Isabella were involved in 1492? Not only were they wheeling and dealing with the Muslims, but they did what? Elliot. They funded Columbus's voyage. I think Dorothy Mills says some funny things about Ferdinand and Isabella. Do you remember from your reading which one of them was like smarter and more capable? Ferdinand or Isabella? Apparently Isabella was the brains of the outfit, not Ferdinand. This German visitor says, in the kingdom of Castile, the queen is king and the king is her servant. This is so completely so that the nobility fear the queen more than the king, who in whatever he does merely carries out the queen's orders and wishes. Maybe this is why it's gone down in history that Columbus asked Isabella. I mean, sometimes they say Ferdinand and Isabella, but there's a poem that my kids memorized about Columbus, and it has him addressing himself to Isabella, not Ferdinand. Okay, so do you remember last week that Charles I, do you remember Charles? That was a long time ago, last week. Charles I, Holy Roman Emperor, his grandpa on one side, you know, he had the Netherlands and Burgundy and everything, and on the other side he had Spain. And then as he got older, he wasn't very well, and he decided to just resign and give everything to his son Philip II. That's the Philip II in the next question I asked you. What happened to Spain's power under Philip II? Anybody? You want to do it, Emma?
They lost their power due to the Netherlands revolting.
Okay. You know what? A whole boatload of bad things happened to them. The Netherlands revolting was one of them. They were just sick and tired. You know, they liked Charles because Charles was one of them. You know, he was born in the Netherlands. The Netherlands were his favorite place. Charles had made his sister regent over the Netherlands, but then his sister wanted to quit, and then he resigned, and it all fell apart. And do you guys know, I wonder if Dorothy Mills has told you yet, what's awesome about the Netherlands? Why would someone want to own the Netherlands? You know, it's all low. There's windmills and tulips, and they have to build dikes to keep the ocean out. Do you have any idea what was happening in the Netherlands? They were the factory place. They had wool factories. You sent wool there, and they turned it into cloth. They were super rich because everyone shipped their wool to the Netherlands to have it processed. England had a deal with the Netherlands. The Netherlands was a jewel to own, right? Because it was so wealthy. No, they revolted. Something else. Did anybody else write something else bad that happened under Philip II? trying to find where Dorothy Mills says it. Hang on. This was kind of between the lines. Well, I can't find it. Oh, here we go. Okay, what Emma just said, Charles had been loved in the Netherlands, but his son was not, and Philip had to deal with a serious revolt which ended for Spain in the loss of the Dutch Netherlands. Now, here's the other thing. As the century drew to its close, a seafaring nation in the north challenged the power of Spain, and in 1588, England defeated the great Spanish armada sent against her. Spain had an enormous fleet. Think for a minute. The New World was discovered in 1492. In the early 1500s was Cortez conquering Mexico, and then we have Pizarro in South America. Why would the Spanish want lots of ships? What were the Spanish doing a lot of? Yeah, conquering where? Yeah, across the Atlantic Ocean. They were sailing back and forth constantly. Oh, we have plenty of time, so I'm going to tell this story. I think she's going to tell it later, but it's fun to tell it now. So, what did a lot of Europeans think the New World was full of? Treasure. Ooh, there's rumors of gold. You know, maybe they landed somewhere and one of the native peoples had a armband of gold or something like that. And they were constantly looking for treasure, right? You maybe know the story of El Dorado, the search for El Dorado, the Golden City, this sort of thing. And you know what? They did find a lot of things of value. Unfortunately, we know this, they took them from the native peoples. Often they just took what the native people already had. When they got to what is now Mexico City, Tenochtitlan was what the Aztecs called it, was very wealthy. And they just gutted it, they stripped it. What do they do with all that treasure? Where does it go next?
The king.
To the king. And the king is in where? And how do they get it there? Boats. So, all the time there are Spanish boats sailing back and forth. And guess what those boats are full of? Treasure. If you happen to be English or French, what do you think I'm going to say next, Noah? You start robbing them. You start robbing them. And it turns out that Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of England, would give you permission to rob them. So you could become a privateer. It's like a legal pirate. You are a legal pirate, right? And so, yeah, well, that's how a lot of people felt. I want to do that because you know what? I can have all the joy of being a pirate, but none of the guilt because it's legal. And I can't be arrested and hanged for a pirate because I have a piece of paper that says the Queen told me I can just so rob any Spanish ship that I want. So this was quite the brisk trade, you know. Either you hide off the coast in Central or South America, you know, and you catch them as they're coming out, or you just waylay them on the ocean, you waylay them before they get into port in Spain, whatever. And so it was dangerous for the Spanish, but it's great for the English. The Spanish got sick and tired of it, obviously. Another thing was going on. This Queen Elizabeth that I mentioned, she never got married, but she was always kind of telling people she might marry them. You know, so if she wanted to get along with Spain, she might say, I might marry the prince. And then she turns around, I might marry the Prince of France. I might marry the royal family of the Netherlands. She never did. But she kept everybody hanging, right? And she ticked some people off in Spain because she did this. So finally Spain said, I've had enough. I've absolutely had enough of England. England's a bunch of rotters, and we're going to go teach them a lesson. And in 1588, they got their whole military fleet together, the Armada, and they sailed to England, and England just trounced them. Just massacred the Spanish Armada. Such a letdown. You know, the very first sentence, I think it was the very first sentence in this chapter, was, in the 16th century, that's the 1500s, the most powerful country in Europe was Spain. By the end of that century, their fleet was gutted. And there were also some other problems, too. First of all, let's talk about why some of this happened. Let's talk about this Philip. We already talked, I see a theme for today. People's character determines their lives. You know, building good character helps you succeed. And having poor character is a problem. Leonardo da Vinci had a character flaw, right? He just wouldn't follow through on things. So he did a lot less than he could have done if he'd concentrated. Here's Philip II's problem. Here's my glasses. In addition to his other characteristics, Philip II was very obstinate, very dilatory and slow. Dilatory simply means he drags things out, kind of means the same as slow. Always procrastinating, and very autocratic. What do you think it means to be autocratic? Auto means yourself, himself. And so democracy. Yeah, autocracy is rule of me. I'm the ruler. So yes, prideful, like a tyrant. My way or the highway, as they say. He lived a secluded life, disliking public appearances, hating ceremonies. He deputed as little as possible to his ministers, even when he trusted them, preferring to attend in person to every detail of government. We would say he didn't know how to delegate, right? So sometimes if your mom has tons to do, it's Christmas or you're having people over and you're having a big party. You probably all are given, you clean the living room, you know, you put out the party decorations. She delegates authority. So she doesn't have to do everything because she doesn't have time to do everything. Philip didn't. Like, no, I'll do it myself. Why might you not be willing to let anybody else do anything to help you? Okay, trust issues, and what did you say, Elliot? Yeah, both of those. I don't think you'll do a good job. I can do it better than you. I feel for Philip because I have a little bit of this illness myself. So like, just let me do it myself. He would sit all day at his desk, reading dispatches, signing papers, occasionally helped by his secretary or by his daughter Isabella, but more often alone. He loved power to such an extent that he was afraid of admitting anyone into his confidence, there's Liam's trust issues, lest his authority should be in any way lessened. These characteristics of Philip, so contradictory, were disastrous to his rule. Endless delays were caused because he took so long to make up his mind and would so seldom delegate any of his authority. So, I don't know. Should we fight the English Armada? I don't know. Should we? I don't know. What are we going to do about the privateers that keep attacking our ships? I don't know. Should we do this? I don't know. Should we do that? Why don't you put together a group of men, a think tank, to figure out how to solve the problems? No, I'll do it myself. And he ruined Spain. There were a couple of other problems too. One of them was the Spaniards, when they got rid of the Moors, did not take their places as agriculturists, artisans, or craftsmen. They relied instead on the wealth of the Indies, of Mexico and Peru. We don't need workers. We don't need industry. We don't need to make things to sell abroad. We'll just keep bringing money over in ships, the ones that make it through from the privateers. Except, eventually the money runs out, you know? Eventually you've robbed the natives of all you can find. Eventually you've found a silver mine, but it runs dry. It says, with the result that financially Spain was ruined, for this wealth was exaggerated and there was little or no industrial wealth to take its place. They didn't try to build their country up. They just said, let's just keep shipping gold and silver, it'll be fine. And then it wasn't fine anymore because there was no more to ship in. Go ahead. Oh, is it stuck? Oh, it really sticks. There you go. I thought I was locked in here once. Another thing that was going on in Spain, I really think we should talk about for a little bit. Dorothy Mills doesn't mention it much because it's, I don't know, not very pleasant to talk about. I guess it's controversial. The Spanish Inquisition. Do you guys know, if I say the word Inquisition, what do you think of? Okay. When I say the Spanish Inquisition, do you have a picture that pops into your mind? Okay. You know what? This is very good because the Spanish Inquisition, okay, so when modern day people who are anti-Christianity argue that Christianity is an evil for the world, and there are people that argue this, one of the very first things that's going to come out of their mouth is, what about the Inquisition? Always throw that up. What about the Inquisition? So first I have to tell you what it is, since we don't know, and then you'll see why people might think it's a blot on the church. The Inquisition was a group of churchmen set up to root out heresy, disagreement with the church. For example, people who claimed to have become Christians but were secretly still Muslims. They arrest you and bring you before the Inquisition. And it does mean questions. They will question you, but they will do more than that. Jews, particularly, were forced to be Christians, weren't allowed to practice Judaism. And if they suspected you were secretly a Jew, you know, you just, on the outside, you went to church and everything, but on the inside, you just, like, you observed all the Jewish customs. They would haul you before the Inquisition board. If you just taught anything that disagreed with the church, they would arrest you and haul you before the Inquisition. And in many cases, they would torture you to confess that you had done something wrong. What is the problem with torturing a confession out of someone?
They'll admit it even if they don't do it.
Yeah, why?
To get them to stop.
Yeah, I'll say anything if you'll stop doing that to me. It's kind of worthless. I mean, we look at it as sort of ridiculous. Really? You're going to torture someone until they talk? Oh, they'll talk. Just because they want you to stop. So people would confess, right? And then you would sometimes be sentenced to death. And they would burn you at the stake. Or if you didn't confess, they would think you were just being obstinate, you know, and they might throw you back in prison and then take you out and torture you again. Now, that said, there are people that say things like millions of people were killed by the Inquisition. This is not true. There were probably thousands of people killed by the Inquisition. That's not good. But it's not hundreds of thousands or 1 million people or something like that. Don't get me wrong. Even one isn't good. In the modern world, we see it as being kind of fruitless and ridiculous to kill someone because they don't agree with your viewpoint. You know what I mean? And America is founded, right, that the government cannot interfere with people's free exercise of religion. And that means every religion. Unless your religion involves, I don't know, sacrificing human beings or something, and then that would be another case. So all sorts of religions thrive in America because the government isn't allowed to set up one religion and it's not allowed to persecute you if you have another one. But this was not always so in other places, and it wasn't true in Spain. They were very, very harsh about it. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't get told and a lot of people don't know. The Pope didn't like it. It wasn't the church that was doing it. It was Spain that was doing it. There was an Inquisition for the whole church, but it wasn't anything like the Spanish Inquisition, right? They would investigate cases of heresy, books that taught something false. They had a list of books, and I believe this list still exists and is maintained, of books that are not a good idea for Christians to read. They will mess with your faith. They didn't run around grabbing people and arresting them left and right and center, but they did in Spain. It was really rough. So can you see why people might point to that and say, see how wicked the church is? Once upon a time, they did this to people. They did it in Spain. How can I ask this question? Imagine you are a great thinker. Okay? Maybe you don't have to imagine. Maybe you are a great thinker. But on the outside possibility that you're not, just imagine, all right? And you have remarkable ideas about God and the world, just like groundbreaking ideas. But you live in a country where if you say the wrong thing, you might get burned at the stake. How eager are you going to be to share your ideas? You're not. I'm not telling anyone anything. In some cases, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe your ideas are heresy. Maybe they will lead people astray. Maybe not. Maybe they're just ideas about technology or science or something like that, but you're afraid to speak up. So Spain sort of, if you know, shot themselves in the foot. They hurt their own selves by their policies. Philip wouldn't let anybody help him. He had to do everything himself, and he couldn't make up his mind. And then let's run around and arrest people all over the place and torture them. The beginning of the 1500s, they started out strongest, richest country in Europe. It took, do you notice this? It took less than a century to take the leading country in Europe and make it one of the bottom countries. When we have a good government, you have to keep it, right? Because it can go south on you really, really fast. See, maybe this is Ben Franklin Day, because this is the second time he's popped into my head. After they wrote up the Constitution in 1787, because they were doing it kind of secretly, you know. And they came out, and some lady is supposed to have asked them, what have you given us? What have you done? What are you giving us? And Ben Franklin supposedly said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. And he didn't mean just her. He meant if the people of America can keep it. People of Spain didn't keep what they had. And they lost it. They lost it. There was one shining moment for Spain. And this is the next question I asked you. Who fought at the Battle of Lepanto, and why, and what was the outcome? You answer any or all of those questions. Luke, you want it?
Turks, the Spanish, and the Italians fought.
Yes. And who won?
The Turks' fleet was destroyed.
Yes. Yes. Do you remember, I told you last week, that nasty Francis, King of France, wanted to be the Holy Roman Emperor, right? He was a candidate against Charles. And what did he do? He called the Turks in. Like he cut deals with the Turks on the other side of the empire. If you will just come attack, you know, the areas that are today Eastern Europe, right? If you will just attack those areas, Hungary, and then you will distract Charles, and I can get in and you know, maybe I'll get elected emperor. I can carry out my plans while he's distracted. Well, you don't just invite enemies in and then think they will go away when you're done with them. It doesn't work like that. They stay. You know, you invite them in and they stay. And so they just started working their way across the Mediterranean. And Lepanto is off the coast of Greece. And Greece is really, really close to Italy. Greece is really close to Italy. They were that close. It was very, very dangerous. And Philip and his brother, half-brother, Don Juan of Austria, and Don John, sometimes they call him, and an Italian fleet, fought the Turks and completely obliterated their fleet. And basically, that was one of the last big danger moments for Europe of the Muslims invading Europe. Now, I brought, there's a very long poem about this battle. Very long. It's like 3 or 4 pages long. It's not that long. By G.K. Chesterton, if you are familiar with Chesterton. And I'm just going to read a portion of it because it's awesome. And what it is, you know, the Muslims had the ships in their fleet, and the ships were rowed, right? When you're in a sea battle, you don't sail. You know, it takes a little while to adjust the sails. You row, right? And you've got somebody down there with the oarsmen, you know, beating out the time and telling them to turn and everything. And who might you use to row your boat? Prisoners, right? You put prisoners down there because it's nasty. It stinks. There's no airflow. They probably don't feed you very well, and it's hard. It's hard work, and maybe you're chained, you know, and you can't do anything but row all day. So this portion of the poem is about the sort of the rejoicing of the slaves when they realize that the Turkish fleet has been overcome and they're being saved by the Europeans. They're being set free. Okay, here we go. And above the ships are palaces of brown, black-bearded chiefs, and below the ships are prisons, where with multitudinous griefs, Christian captives, sick and sunless, all a laboring race repines like a race in sunken cities, like a nation in the mines. They are lost like slaves that sweat, and in the skies of morning hung the stairways of the tallest gods when tyranny was young. They are countless, voiceless, hopeless, as those fallen are fleeing on before the high king's horses in the granite of Babylon. And many a one grows witless in his quiet room in hell, where a yellow face looks inward through the lattice of his cell. And he finds his God forgotten, and he seeks no more a sign. But Don John of Austria has burst the battle line, Don John pounding from the slaughter-painted poop, purpling all the ocean like a bloody pirate sloop, scarlet running over on the silvers and the golds, breaking of the hatches up and bursting of the holds, thronging of the thousands up that labor under sea, white for bliss and blind for sun and stunned for liberty. Vivat Hispania, Domino Gloria. Don John of Austria has set his people free. The moment where they break up the hatches and it's over. I've been set free. I picture the Allies coming into the concentration camps, you know, at the end of World War II and setting people free. This was a huge victory for the Allies of Spain, but Spain was already on the way down. It's a sad story. Now, the last question, we already answered it really. Why did Spain become so rich in the beginning of the 16th century? I'm going to let Noah do it. Gold and silver mines in Peru in the New World. Now, lest you think that Spain was just a train wreck, what did we get from Spain? First of all, universities. The University of Spain were once upon a time the most advanced places of learning in Europe because of the Muslim teaching. And Dorothy Mills tells us the great period of Spanish painting was in the 17th century, but their most famous painter belongs chiefly to the 16th. He was Greek, and so they call him El Greco, the Greek. That's what it means in Spanish. He's just the Greek. And you've looked at several different kinds of painting. You looked at Leonardo da Vinci's portraits. Take a look at this. It's different. It's the Virgin with Saint Ines and Saint Tekla. I'll hold it before the. It's just well, you tell me. Is there anything that strikes you as just kind of different about it than the stuff we've been looking at? What can you identify anything that just seems not the same?
The line in the background, but it's a bit more intricate.
It's very intricate. There's a lion in the background?
Not background, down, underneath the dude's hand.
Oh, yes. Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Oh.
You guys are really good. So why, okay, first of all, why a lion and a lamb? Say it, Amelia.
Because the lion eats the lamb.
Oh, because the lion eats the lamb? Yeah, that would be unfortunate, but
Jesus is honestly known as both the lion and the lamb.
Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He's also the Lamb of God. Also, it tells us the prophets talk about a time when the lion, is it the lion will die down with the lamb? Or is it I knew it was a fierce animal and a non-fierce animal, but I wasn't sure if I had that right. All the clouds, I mean, the floating in the clouds thing, every picture I've shown you so far of Mary and Jesus, they've been on the ground, we'll just say. They've been in a setting of some sort, not in an otherworldly, odd, disconnected from all reality place. El Greco, so if you're interested, Google El Greco paintings. There's a lot of them, and they're really different. You might really like them. They're just very distinctive. This book is actually from the Washington, D.C. National Gallery of Art. So this one's in Washington, D.C. This El Greco painting. Anyway, check out El Greco if you are interested. Yeah, very odd. All right, next week we are going to read about England. So I talked a lot about England today. We talked about Queen Elizabeth, her fleet destroying the Spanish Armada. We're going to go back in time a little bit and talk about Elizabeth's dad. Elizabeth's dad is really, really famous. He is Henry VIII. And so I'm just curious, before you read, when I say Henry VIII of England, do you automatically think of anything? Is there anything in particular that you think of? Oh, I'm Henry VIII, I am. Oh, I got married to the widow next door. That's a really old song, Elliot. I'm so proud of you for knowing this. Like that song's before my time even. And everybody else is thinking, what? Maybe we'll have to sing it next week after everybody.
Please do.
What does anybody know something about Henry VIII? Like he's notorious for doing something.
I don't.
That's okay.
Wasn't he the English king that had all those wives that died? I think that's what most of us would think about when thinking about Henry VIII.
That is exactly what I was fishing for.
Made a musical about it.
Yes. So you can remember
I've seen it yet.
he had 6 wives, and you can remember easily what happened to them. So divorced, killed and died, divorced, killed and survived. So that's what happened to his 6 wives. Yeah, okay, we'll have to entertain you with the song next week. And so we'll find out what's going on in England. Something else really, really wild is going on in England under Henry VIII that I will leave you to find out about. So read chapter 6 and answer the questions for next week. I also, earlier, when we first got here, I went around and I looked at everybody's outlines. Amelia, I don't know that I looked at yours. Do you need me to look at yours, or do you have it with you?
I'm having trouble with it.
Okay. Do you have your list? of ideas, or do you have anything? Do you have a start on your? Okay, you know what? We're going to help Amelia. Everybody, get your outline out if you have it with you.
Which one?
Your outline for the Hobbit paper. And Amelia, you're just going to steal ideas because this is not. We're okay with that. Yeah.
Are you doing no or yes? Just
Yeah, we need to know that. Do you think that he should give the Arkenstone or he should not? Or is that hard for you to decide? Amelia, do you think he should give the Arkenstone to Bard or do you think he should not? Do you have a gut feeling?
he shouldn't.
You think he shouldn't? Did anyone else argue he shouldn't? Oh, that's unfortunate.
I should have.
Okay, know what? But we're also, you know what?
I will rewrite this.
Shh. No, listen, shh, guys, settle down. Amelia, have your paper, get your pencil. We're going to come up with 3, I want you all to look at your lists. We're going to come up with 3 good blanket reasons, umbrella reasons, why he should not. This will be good for everyone. If Amelia thinks he should not, we're not going to peer pressure her into saying that Bilbo should. So, everybody look at your nose. Do you see a pattern? Do you see a group of no's, perhaps, that would go together as an umbrella idea? I'm asking you to get all sorts of stuff out, aren't I? Everybody's looking for it.
The idea that it wasn't supposed to give away.
Okay, I think Emma's hit maybe the strongest one. Let's write this down, Amelia. The Arkenstone didn't belong to Bilbo. Can we support that with 3? Why do you think that, Emma? Can you just give me one of them, maybe? Like, why would we think that? Or anybody, not to put Emma on the spot, but.
Wasn't it a family heirloom of Thorin?
Yes, okay.
It belonged to Thorin.
Thorin's family heirloom. You don't just give away family heirlooms. Here's another thing. I'll push you in this direction. How did Bilbo feel about it when he picked it up, Liam?
He said that it wasn't really his to give anyway.
Bilbo felt uncomfortable.
I write this down.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, you don't have to redo your paper. This is for Amelia. Bilbo felt uncomfortable taking it.
It wasn't his share of the treasure. That's not what they really meant.
Yeah, they didn't intend, the dwarves didn't intend that to be part of his share. So that's a really solid paragraph. That's a really solid no paragraph, I feel. Amelia is copying that down. But let's think if we can think of another one. Like this was a good one. Another no. We did ask ourselves something. What might have happened if he didn't do it? Can we think of any good results? Or did we only write down bad results?
The war happened anyway.
Okay.
I think I mentioned that either way could have led to an argument.
Okay. So how about our umbrella reason, number 2, could be it didn't help. Giving it didn't help. Now we need to come up with 3. Okay, so you already said the war still happened. How did Thorin feel about it?
He was angry.
Oh, it infuriated Thorin, and honestly, we could use this as a 3rd reason. Thorin tried to kill Bilbo.
Thorin died because of the giving away the Arkenstone.
Oh, and okay, we can throw another one in. Thorin died. Well, no, that
That wasn't really a direct result.
yeah, Thorin still died. So that goes in with it just didn't help. It just didn't. Does that make sense, Amelia? Mm-hmm. We still need one more solid one, though. It didn't really belong to him. Giving it away didn't help. Look at your no's. Look at your no list and see if you guys can, because I can't even remember. You've got it in front of you, but I don't. Is there another reason on our no list that we haven't included yet up here? Do you have a no that we haven't addressed? If so, read it out, and then we'll see if we can build an argument around it.
Thorn came all this way for that? I don't know, that kind of goes as belongs to him.
Yeah. What do we got? Anybody?
We have another one that says, but what motivates mostly by desire to go home.
Okay, since we need something, we need material, let's run with that. Bilbo had wrong motives. Now, this might be a little difficult. He only wanted to go home. Does Bilbo seem to care about armies and politics at all? No. He ignored the political situation. He just didn't care.
He didn't care what Thorn thought either.
That's very strong. I like this one. He ignored Thorin's wishes after Thorin had been good to him. I know he wasn't very nice at the beginning, but had been good to him. You know, he wasn't very nice at the beginning, but as time went on, and Bilbo saved them numerous times. Ever in your service, Mr. Baggins, you know, and he's very, very conciliatory toward him. He's very nice to him. And then Bilbo just kind of stabbed him in the back, as it were, by doing what he knew would infuriate him and deeply hurt him, that Bilbo would do this. Now, I'm saying it that way because I'm arguing no. See, I'm trying to play up how wicked it was, even if I don't agree.
My
Yes.
question is, after the Gandalf brought the Arkenstone up to the cave and the dwarves came, well, did the elves and them fight after the orcs came, or did they fight together?
They fought together.
Okay.
Everybody banded together when the orcs came. No, everybody hates the orcs. Goblins, no, nobody likes them. They have no friends. It's because they're not friendly.
They should be going on others.
What?
The goblins should be going on others.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't trust them. And they smell. I bet they smell. Does that, Amelia, did you get that down? And does that make sense? So does that, I think that provides you with enough. So we're going to write this paper this week. I'm not going to ask you to put something new in. But remember, you need parallelism 1, parallelism 2, a strong verb, and a simile. I'm going to read a couple of similes to you today from Fellowship of the Ring that are amazing, and talk about similes for a minute. Remember, a simile is when you compare two things, when you say one thing is like another. Yes, Amelia?
How do we reread the simile to my paper? Do we just write out the word?
You can just write S in the margin, and then strong verb could be SV. Okay? Please, I'm going to say this. We're over halfway through the school year, and some of you are not marking these in the margin. Mark it. I asked you to mark it. I have to read your paper and search, and then I feel bad. I get to the end of it, and I think maybe they put it in, and I missed it. Maybe I should read their paper again and see if I can find it. It takes me a long time sometimes. They don't always jump out at me after 20 papers. So please just grab a pencil. You don't have to type it into the margin, and change your margins. Just print it out if you type it, and just grab a pencil and just write it in the margin really quick. It'll take you 10 seconds. And it saves me. Yes, some of you do mark them, and I thank you. If you do, I am not talking to you. Thank you for your service. But if you don't, please mark them and bring that to me next week. All right? Are you good, Amelia? All right, awesome. Let me read. Let's start on our Fellowship of the Ring with me reading a couple of these amazing similes I told you last week that when we do similes, you and I both, we just kind of try our best to think of something that will sound okay. Like, what am I going to compare it to? I don't know. I'll think of something. But good authors are able to use similes to show you something about what they're comparing. So now, unfortunately, I did not, of course, color code. I know there are two blues, and if I had any sense, those would be my similes. No, I have no sense. They're not. I feel like I even, okay, no, I know why I marked that. Hang on, give me a moment. All right, I know why I marked that. It's not a simile. Oh, okay. Listen to this one. This is Frodo and the rest of them are at Tom Bombadil's house. And they've spent the night. It was a pale morning. In the east, behind long clouds, like lines of soiled wool, stained red at the edges, like glimmering deeps of yellow. You know, have you ever been up in the morning or at a sunset, and the long rows of clouds, those clouds that kind of string out, you know, but they're red, they're tinged red with the sunrise or the sunset. He said they're like soiled wool stained red at the edges. All right, so, all right, yeah, sunrise. Sometimes the sky is red, got it. But think about it, what he said. Soiled wool. What is something being soiled? How does that make you feel? Dirty. Okay, it's dirty. It's dirty wool. And it's stained what color? Red. Red like blood, like red alert, like danger. Do you see what I mean? It's an uncomfortable feeling. He's safe at Tom Bombadil's. Nothing messes with Tom Bombadil. But not even Barrow Whites mess with Tom Bombadil. But they're not always going to be safe. Do you see what I mean? It's a simile, and it's okay, I can see the clouds, but now if I think about the simile, I think, ooh, it speaks of danger and unpleasantness, soiled. It's very distinctive. Okay. This is at the Barrow Downs, the burial mounds from the old battle that they crossed. Barrow Whites walked in the hollow places with the clink of rings on cold fingers and gold chains in the wind. Stone rings grinned out of the ground like broken teeth in the moonlight. Can you see the, like, broken teeth? What do teeth do? They chew, they bite. They're dangerous. But they're not just like broken teeth, they're grinning. This is called personification. This is another figure of speech. It's like they're alive and they're grinning, but the teeth are saying, I'm going to eat you, and I'm happy about it. It's horrifying. So in one place, okay, I get a nice mental picture with that simile, right? I can see jagged stones, like a person whose teeth are kind of uneven and broken off. They're like jagged, broken teeth. But then if I start thinking about it, oh my goodness, what do teeth do? And these teeth are grinning, and I don't think it's a nice sort of grin. It's not a happy grin. So similes, those are two great ones. I don't expect your simile to be, you know, like, I shouldn't say that, the most amazing simile ever written. Don't worry about it. I'm not, you better give me a simile with deep symbolic meaning. No, just give me a simile. But as we get better with them, we can think of things to compare to that give a hint about the feeling we want to communicate, about what's happening in the story. Tolkien is a great writer, so he's able to do that. All right, let's talk about Tom Bombadil. Something happened at Tom Bombadil's that made us know there's something peculiar about Tom Bombadil. Does anybody remember the particular thing I'm thinking of? He did something. He did something. What happened to him when he put the ring on? But he didn't. "Show me the precious ring," he said suddenly. Of course, they hadn't mentioned it. He knows. "Show me the precious ring," he said suddenly in the midst of the story. And Frodo, to his own astonishment, drew out the chain from his pocket and, unfastening the ring, handed it at once to Tom. Frodo you don't give the ring to anybody, right? Remember Bilbo? But it's mine. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He just hands it to Tom Bombadil. It seemed to grow larger as it lay for a moment on his big brown-skinned hand. And then suddenly he put his eye to it and laughed. For a second, the hobbits had a vision, both comical and alarming, of his bright blue eye gleaming through a circle of gold. Then Tom put the ring around the end of his little finger and held it up to the candlelight. For a moment, the hobbits noticed nothing strange about this. Then they gasped. There was no sign of Tom disappearing. Tom laughed and then spun the ring in the air, and it vanished in a flash. Frodo gave a cry, and Tom leaned forward and handed it back to him with a smile. Tom Bombadil, the ring has no power over Tom Bombadil. We also, when they first meet Goldberry, his wife, remember, Tom also has power over something else. How did he rescue the hobbits? What does he have power over? The trees. Apparently, nature just does whatever he says. These kind of sentient trees in the old forest just open. He says, hey, open up and let him out. And they just do it. So they get there to his house, and they meet Goldberry. "Fair lady," said Frodo again after a while, "tell me if my asking does not seem foolish. Who is Tom Bombadil?" "He is," said Goldberry, staying her swift movements and smiling. "He is." Who else was asked their name? And they answered in a very similar way. Not in this book. It's in the Bible. But, yes, Jesus said it because who said it first? God. When Moses said, "What's your name?" I am. I am existence itself. All existence flows out of me. Goldberry says, of course, Goldberry can't say "I am" because she's talking about someone else. She said, "He is." He's like, now, I happen to know he's not the god of this world. The god of this world is Iluvatar. We learn this in the Silmarillion. But he's something above everything. And Tom tells them something. He tells them when they move on, and they have to go across the Barrow Downs. He tells them to beware, but he also says, there were fortresses. Okay, I'm going to start earlier. They heard of the great barrows and the green mounds and the stone rings upon the hills. I looked away and lost my place. And stone rings upon the hills and in the hollows among the hills. Sheep were bleating in flocks. Green walls and white walls rose. There were fortresses on the heights. Kings of little kingdoms fought together, and the young sun shone like fire on the red metal of their new and greedy swords. There was victory and defeat, and towers fell, fortresses were burned, and flames went up into the sky. Gold was piled on the biers of dead kings and queens, and mounds covered them, and the stone doors were shut, and the grass grew over all. Sheep walked for a while biting the grass, but soon the hills were empty again. A shadow came out of dark places far away, and the bones were stirred in the mounds. Barrow wights walked in the hollow places with a clink of rings on gold fingers, like gold chains in the wind. Have all things in Middle-earth been in the past like they are now when Frodo sees them? Like, has history gone on the same? Like, were the Barrow Downs always just grassy fields? What were they once? Kingdoms. They were great kingdoms, and wars were fought there. Gildor the elf, when they meet him in the woods, he says this. Frodo says, I didn't expect to meet danger in my own shire, you know, the Black Riders. But it is not your own shire, said Gildor. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. 600 years ago, what was here, where we are sitting right now? Indians, nothing, woods, animals. What will be here 600 years from now if Jesus doesn't return before then? I have no idea. This building, probably not. Middle Earth is like our Earth. It doesn't belong to us, does it? We move through history, right? In Indiana Jones, or in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, the bad French guy, Belloc says, we are passing through history, but this is history. You know, he's pointing to the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, Tom Bombadil, though, does last. I get the idea Tom Bombadil saw those kingdoms, right? And here's the weird thing. Tolkien, in all his writings, never really said who Tom Bombadil is. Tom Bombadil doesn't come into the Silmarillion or the other writings about Middle-earth. People speculate, and Tolkien just kind of left. I don't know. He's some sort of being above and beyond. Is he like the equivalent of an angel would be here? I don't know.
I think I read, or my brother read.
Yeah.
He is the kind of like the counterpart of Adam and Eve.
So like he's the one who obeys Iluvatar and he has life.
Being.
He's the perfect being.
With Goldberry.
With Goldberry.
That's why they live. Nothing harms them.
Nothing harms them. Animals don't harm them. No harm comes to them. I like that. What if we had lived in obedience to God, you know, if Adam and Eve had, we would live in perfect safety. Nothing would harm us. Wouldn't that be lovely? Speaking of harm, you ended your reading with pretty bad harm. The Black Riders caught up with them, didn't they, at Weathertop? Aragorn. Does Aragorn seem at first glance like somebody you should trust? He's a little shifty, just a little. At the Prancing Pony, you know, he just sits in the dark and he watches. And he seems to unpleasantly know that this guy is not named Mr. Underhill. And they used this line in the movie, but I think Sam said it instead of Frodo. Strider, as he calls himself, says, well, if you want to go, you're going to have a guide. I know what hunts you, and I can get you through. Will you come? There was a long silence. At last, Frodo spoke with a hesitation. I believed that you were a friend before the letter came, he said. Or at least I wish to. You frightened me several times tonight, but never in the way that servants of the enemy would, I think. I think one of his spies would, well, seem fairer and feel fouler, if you understand. There's something about Strider that seems okay, even though he's a little scary and he doesn't look like much. But he looks like maybe he feels like someone you would trust. Satan, do you remember the verse that says how Satan can appear if he wants to? He can appear as a what? Do you know what I'm thinking of? As an angel of light. He looks good. But if we're trained, if we're becoming more virtuous and led by the Holy Spirit, it feels off. Aragorn feels okay, but he looks off, right? He's the opposite. And he even has his own poem that says that he's gold underneath, even though he doesn't look good on the surface. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king. That is the poem that Gandalf in his letter, which Butterbur did not send to Frodo, because he's an idiot, describes Aragorn, Strider. Go ahead, and this week I would like you to read, finish, so you know Fellowship of the Ring has 2 books, 2 parts, right? Finish book 1, read the rest of book 1, and then read book 2 to the end of chapter 3, okay? Through the end of book 2, chapter 3. It is the chapter called, I will tell you when I find the table of contents. Okay, it is The Ring Goes South. Read to the end of The Ring Goes South. All right, are we good? All right, I will let you guys go. Have a good week.